Join me for tea with Sarah with Cedric Nicolas-Tryan. He was Oscar nominated for visual effects on Snow White, and he's just about to take the helm on The Huntsman. Thanks for joining me for tea.
All right.
It's hot, but let me taste it.
All right, Sarah.
Cheers.
Let's do this. Yeah, I mean, that's the first tea I've made like in 3 years.
It's nice. It's actually
Really?
nice, yeah. It's quite
You're nice.
weak, but I like it. And you loved comics. I was reading that
Yes.
when you were a kid, you absolutely loved comics.
Yes, that's the one thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to be a comic book artist. I was like it was like once a month, every Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month, there was the comic called Strange coming out. And Strange was really a compilation of like Marvel comics. So it was one Spider-Man, a little bit of Daredevil, a little bit of this. And so that was like once a month, there was this compilation of American comics, and I couldn't wait to get my hand on this. And then every trimester, there was a Special Strange. And Special Strange was with the X-Men, and X-Men was my favorite, and Wolverine was my favorite. So I was like, I say, well, when I grow up, I want to be like a comic book artist. And I was a good drawer and this and that. So that was my thing until I kind of realized the movie thing, because like that was my first movie. My first movie was comic books, and then after that came the movie. I mean, I loved movies like all my life. I was always like, I went to see Star Wars when I was 7 years old. That was my first movie ever that I went to see by myself. I was in England, and I'm sitting in the first row, and I'm like,
amazing, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm 7 years old, and I'm like, and then I see like guys with like shining armors and laser. I don't understand a word they're saying. I have no idea what's going on, and I go back to my mom, and I'm like, oh, there is this place. It's amazing, and then we should move there. And she's like, what? and so I explained to her the movie, and she said, no, but that's not a real place. That's not a real place. And I'm like, oh, no, it's like, and I mean now, like 7-year-old kids now, they all know that, but my time,
that really started you sort of thinking about this other world that was out there.
Exactly, and she said, oh, that's the movie, and I'm like, oh, crap. So then I should do movies if I want to live there. Like the point was to go live on Tatooine, kind of a thing in the Star Wars world. So all those years after, I meet this guy, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. I gotta at least try. So I can look back and say, I tried everything I could.
And so after you won, well, you were Oscar nominated for the film.
Yes, I did.
Did you see a huge difference? Did that open an enormous amount of doors for you?
That's I remember like when I got nominated, and I just think I never really processed it. Like when I got nominated, like Gloria Borders, who was the executive producer of visual effects on the movie, is wonderful. We remain really good friends to this day. She called me and she was screaming. She was like, "Oh my God, you got nominated! And I was like, and I was listening to her, 6 a.m. And I was listening to her, and I was like, I didn't even know the nomination came out. So it gives you the card of that club, and what it does though, it gives you a lot of credibility in the feature world.
Right.
Because all of a sudden you're like, okay, that guy came out of nowhere. And to be honest, Rue and I were like a little bit in the same lot there, which is like.
When you talk about Rue,
Rupert Sanders.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, who's a great friend of yours. You've worked together for years.
Yes. Like a huge friend of mine, and he was the director of Snow White and the Huntsman, and it was his first movie, and I came out of nowhere, and I remember him saying, when they were talking about me, like, well, but who is this guy? And he was saying to them, so give him a chance.
Yeah.
And they did, and and that leads to the nomination, obviously. So from afar, what you see is like somebody that kind of wasn't unknown, and coming in and getting the job and being nominated for an Oscar and this and that. So it gave me a lot of credibility as a because as also a second unit director.
I was
on the
going to
movie.
say, you weren't just
Yeah.
doing visual effects, you were
No.
also directing, weren't you?
Yeah.
And presumably, that film also took a long time to make, or I
Yeah.
don't know exactly how
Yeah.
long, but I'm assuming
It took a long time to prep and to shoot, but then the post part was really quick, actually.
Right. So presumably you're also, throughout that period, you're developing strong relationships with the studio that had produced that movie.
Yes.
So that sort of
yes,
opens
yes.
up other doors and
Yeah.
other relationships, doesn't
Yes,
it?
yes, absolutely. And that's one thing that is amazing in the feature world. You have those producers that are kind of like, they're not looking for the flavor of the month. They're looking for the next flavor, or what's the next flavor.
Right.
And that's how Rupert got Snow White. It's like, this guy, he's talented.
He recognizes.
They recognize. They want to find the next talent. They don't want to use the same guy over and over. And there's nothing wrong with that.
And I guess from sort of, Ridley Scott was one of the first Brits to come over here, wasn't he? Who, not only just Brits, but people who come from a commercial background, who really showed that, they can move into the movie world.
Oh yeah.
Things.
And then there is like a lot of version of those directors that moved into the movie world, and recently, like you see, like Gore Verbinski or like Francis Lawrence or Rupert or those guys who just really become those really great. And I work with Francis and I work with Gore, and they are amazing guys and they're very talented. And also they're great guys. That's the thing. That's the one thing that they all they have in common. It's like they are great directors, but they're also like regular people. They just like, they have kids, they go home to their kids, they read them stories. They're just there for the craft. And something that Gore was once said to me, I think it was like when we were doing like Weatherman, he was like, and he said it just like that, and it became one of my big quotes of my life, He doesn't probably know that, Gore, if you see that, he said like, you know what, if the scene is behind the camera, then somebody is not doing his job right.
If
the scene is behind the camera,
yes.
So like it's like if the director is just making the whole like shebang and be like,
if it's all about him.
Exactly.
Right,
if
okay.
the scene is behind the camera, then somebody's not doing his job right. The scene should be in front of the camera, and behind the camera is about focus. Is about trying to find the right voice, the right tone, trying to love your actor.
I can see that. I mean, just having arrived a little bit earlier and just talking to you about Highlander, and just your enthusiasm for every single detail. Like I can feel the enthusiasm for the costume design, for the art direction, for the sets, for the visual effects, for the actors. And I guess that's what you're saying, isn't it? Is that for you, directing is not just about.
It's not about barking orders and say, I want this or I want that.
It's being able to have a part, to say, a vision for absolutely every single little detail of it.
And that's the thing. I think the devil is really in the detail, and it's about like knowing what's the name of that thing, what's the name of her mom, what's the name, and so create, because that's what leads. Like knowing everything about the character is going to lead me to the visual.
Right.
The character needs to lead me to the visual and not the other way around. Because if I come up with the visual and I try to force a character into it, then it's just, to me, it's just not organic. I have to know the character, and that character leads me to the visual and not the other way around. And for Highlander, it's kind of that. It's like trying to find all those little details, all those things. Like why is he wearing this? He's wearing this because he spent some of his time in Japan. In Japan, they wear that type of stuff, and now he's translated that, and he wears it here because it is useful. It's like trying to know all that type of stuff, and that's what's really everything is about.
Do you care about those people?
That
you relate to them,
You always care about why people like Wolverine more than Cyclops, why people love Batman more than Superman. And because they are more complex, because they are more shady, because they have shades of gray, because they are more like us.
They want to be able to,
People want to,
something.
exactly. People want to relate, and they want to have like, to me, it's about finding a character that you're going to associate yourself with and say, I could be this guy, or I want to be this guy, or I could have been that person, or that girl, or this or that. Trying to find that link. And then when you get that link, then all of a sudden you get into a more emotional approach, which is like a more physiological approach. So it's like, and that's like about a scare or tears. Because physiologically you were like scary, you know. So you're like, you're feeling in your body, you know, whether it's cries, whether it's scare, whether it's laugh. And so I think that's the thing. Like when you get that connection with the character, and then when you can get the audience to feel, you know, to feel it, like in their body, then they come out and they're like, oh my God, that was a cool movie. But they're not like, oh, I like the visual effects, or I like the costume, and I like the this, or I like, oh, he wasn't very good, or he was good, or this and that. They just come out and they're like, that movie was cool.
Yeah, exactly. They feel something.
Exactly.
I think that's the reason I can't go swimming, because I saw Jaws. It's just like literally to this day, I just can't put my foot in the sea. I'm just absolutely terrified.
My mom is like that, you know.
One of the things also I've sort of noticed just looking at your work, you come from this strong visual effects background, but it feels like you really are pushing for things to feel really authentic, and it seems like you do a lot in camera as opposed to, and then you add visual effects as opposed to, you know, you're not into virtual worlds and all that sort of stuff. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that, because it feels, you know, like the whole virtual reality thing is being talked about at the moment as being the next big thing.
To me it is, but it will be like, you know, there is one thing that is amazing with films, is like there is something amazing about being in the passenger seat. Driving is good, and I like driving, and everybody likes driving, you know, but sometimes being in the passenger seat, it gives you time to look at the panorama, and I think this is where it's at. To me, it's like one is driving and one is being a passenger, and I think there is room for both. There is something peaceful about being told a story. You know what I mean? It's like something that is kind of comforting, you know, when you go to bed, or when you say like I'm going to tell you a story. And there is, so I think to me it's really two different things. It's like one thing is very active and one thing is more like contemplative and passive. You know what I mean? And I think, and I agree with you, that's the next thing, but I don't think it's gonna push the other one away.
Right.
And then to answer the digital vacuum, you know, the blue screen world, yes, that is so not my style. My take is this: the world that we live in is amazing. It really is. Like there is like, I love like Discovery Channel and BBC World, no, BBC like, you know, like, what's the HD, like when they do their like Planet Earth.
Yes.
Amazing. Yes. It's amazing. Like one of my biggest inspiration for Snow White was to take things that exist and put them together. You know, take a bird and you put it on the head of a badger. Never happens in the world, but when you see that happening, it's just amazing, because you know the badger, you know the robin, but you never seen them together. If I show you like a next version of a wacky beast with like this and that tentacles and this and that, you're gonna be like, yeah, okay, you know, I've seen, like, you know, since Alien. Everybody's trying to outdo, you know, what's the next creature? Well, more tentacles, more this, more that. Geiger was amazing. He did Alien, you know, and then there was Predator, like amazing designs. But then everybody's trying to do on top of that crab guy and lobster guy, and you know, and my favorite, the slimy guy that comes in a spaceship made out of like super intricate stuff. You're like, okay, so slimy guy coming. How can that work? And I think, you know, there is something amazing about the reality that we live in. And when we use that as the base, for me, I use that as the base, it creates a sense of familiarity with the audience, something that they can really relate to. And then all of a sudden, within that familiarity world, I put something that they never seen, or, you know, like, I mean, that's what interests me, to do something that they haven't seen, but in that familiarity world. I believe personally, like if I was doing the same thing in this kind of wacky environment with like crazy stuff, then it diminish the thing that I'm actually putting in. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
It's like, for me, it's like I have to take the world that I know, that we all know, and I'm more interested in putting that one piece of thing, you know, in it that is going to be like, wow, that's going to be strange. I mean, I show you like some stuff from Highlander. It's that. It's like, you know, Highlander is going to be a movie all in location. I mean, pretty much. I mean, there is no, as far as I know right now, there is no blue screen or green screen and this and that, and it's all going to be in. That's what we kind of did on Snow White. I mean, Snow White, there's very few scenes that were on green screen, like very, very few. And
so you've got the environments and the locations, and you're adding
on top of it,
and that gives you the sort of the believability.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of grittiness that like a reality that I'm going for.
Because also at this Visual Effects Summit, you know, a lot of the guys there were talking about the health of the industry here, and I think it's a big problem. It's been a big problem because so many people have been going over to Europe and to England to shoot these movies.
You know, it's like, I remember when I was nominated for visual effects, that's the year that there was like all those visual effects people outside and saying like, you know, like we're like when Rhythm and News was going down, and amazing, like they work on it was
digital domain.
Digital Domain was going down, and all those guys, I know them, and they helped me, and they're great. The thing is like it's, and people are blaming, the directors, you know, they're bad, or like the studio, they take us down, and I think it's more complicated than that. I really do. I think, you know, I think one thing is like competition within the VFX studios themselves, like outdoing each other, and you know, and then all of a sudden, like the directors and the studio are more bystanders. They're more using that as a leverage. If there were more cohesion, you know, and saying like, well, no, we're not gonna kill each other to get your job, then I think we will have a different story to tell. And I think, you know, there is some of that. There is also mismanagement, you know. Like I mean, I worked and I was up in managerial thing with visual effects company, and you know, it's always how you manage. Like, how you gonna, if you throw people at problem, you know, people at problem, that costs money and all of that. So I think it's it's a very complicated issue.
I want to talk a little bit about like your short film, for instance, which was The Carrot and the Ninja.
Yeah, Carrot versus Ninja, the most uninspired title of all time.
Because you were talking about writing and how you love to get involved in script development, but that was a short film that you wrote some time ago, and you wrote that as well as directed it. And I love that little film. It's great. It's sort of dark comedy, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, that was because got me started with the dark comedy thing.
Right. And so you did that in order to be able to. Did you do that because you wanted to work in commercials?
Yeah.
And that was a sort of like a test film that you did to sort of show people that you're not just this visual effects guy, but you've got that comedy element as well.
Yeah, that's exactly that. I mean, it was like one of the. It was at the time when I had done like I was a visual effects supervisor for many years, and all the agency, like not all the agency, but a lot of agency were knowing me as a visual effects person. So
because of PSYOP, presumably.
And then there was a PSYOP thing. So PSYOP, you know, so because I was one of the director at PSYOP, and the PSYOP is this visual effects animation. And so when I left PSYOP, like all of a sudden, like for me, as I said, I want to work with actors. I want to work. This is what drives me. It always did. Like from when I was a kid, you know.
So you also made a smart move, didn't you? Because you could have joined a variety of different companies.
Oh yeah.
I think the fact that you joined Station Films that had a really good track record in comedy. And great storytelling.
Oh, absolutely.
And obviously Michael D, you know, that was a really smart thing to do. And you know, as you were saying, the last year you've mainly been doing performance.
Yeah, performance, And that was a great thing about Station and Michael, is like they could see what I could do, not what I've done, but what I could do and who I was as a person. And like, this guy is funny as crap, you know what I mean? And he knows how to kind of work it. And the misdirection was something that I always loved. Like, that's really my thing. So I always have a little bit of a dark kind of edge to it, like a little bit moody, you know, but and because I love mixing like childish stuff and darkness, because I found like kids being like super scary sometimes. For me, it was very important to get into a company that was more driven by performance and comedy. So I could get those jobs, and that's the reason why I did Carrot versus Ninja. It was just this thing where I was like, you know what, like, I will never be able to be hired to do a film like that. It's like studio, it takes a long time. It's very kind of like, oh, you know, it's like it's trying to dance ballet with a suit of armor. But that said, they are always ready to take huge risks. Always. Like
but I feel like in advertising there need to be more people who are prepared to take some risks, to be a little bit brave about it, and not to just go for the usual suspects when you're looking for people. It's like we've got to start being a little bit braver and looking outside the box. Do you know what I mean?
I think when you look at the track record of the biggest successes, most of the time you will end up finding that was the case.
Yeah, and there's a creative director who's you know, seen something in a director and they've built a strong relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I feel like often, like you've got the clients, you've got the agency, you've got the production company, and if those are all kept really separate, then you're not communicating properly. And once a project sort of starts happening and you understand what everybody is bringing to it and the concerns, then that can make magic, can't it?
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's just about listening about listening about each other. You know, it's like I always say, like, you know, as a director, you're the captain of the ship. You don't own the ship. You don't own the crew, and you don't own what the ship is transporting. Your job is to take the ship from A to B. That's your job. Right. This is like, you're not like, you know, it's not a pirate endeavor. You know what I mean? And I think
that's a good analogy.
You know what I mean?
It really is. Yeah.